So I think we've got everybody with us, and I think it's probably best. And if people miss me, I'm only the introduction, so that doesn't really matter too much. Welcome to you all to today's event. I'm Alison Henderson, and I'm here with a couple of hats on, I guess. So I'm Chief Executive at Dundee and Angus Chamber of Commerce, and we're one of the partners in the Circular Tayside programme. And later this morning, you'll hear from our Circular Tayside manager, Vaso, who does an enormous amount of work across our region in helping businesses be more circular, think about taking advantage of the circular opportunities that there are. And she very much connects our business community into a whole series of organisations and signposts to partners and other support. So we've been working really closely with our sister Chamber of Commerce, Perthshire, and cover quite a large area. But what's hugely interesting is the enormous impact that this sector that we're going to talk about today has on our region. It's one of the pillars of the big hope for the circular economy within our region, for sure. And there are some people doing just some amazing things, so we're going to hear from them today. So we're here to hear about circular economy and agri-food. And as the Chamber of Commerce, we do a lot of work in connecting into businesses, and we do a quarterly economic indicator survey, and we're just going through the results of that at the moment. But a sector that has enjoyed this year, if there are sectors that have enjoyed this year, is the food and the agriculture sector, and they're reporting increased revenues, increased number of people employed within their sector, and increased optimism, I think, and the outlook for that sector in our region is really, really forecasting for it to be something that's going to make a massive difference to our economy. And it's great to be able to talk about, so our headline for our event today is business opportunities that don't cost the earth. And I think that, you know, I really like that. There's lots of ways to kind of look at how we interpret that headline. But I'm going to get out of the way and introduce our speakers to you. So we are going to hear this morning from Professor Derek Stewart from the James Hutton Institute. We are going to hear from Iain Stirling from Arbikie, and Dr. Jonathan Wilkin, to give you your Sunday name, John, from Abertay University. So we are recording today's session. If you don't want to be featured in that recording, then I would suggest you turn your cameras off, but not the speakers, because that wouldn't be so good. And so that's all from me. What we'll do is, if you would keep questions for our speakers to the end, and we'll have a collective Q&A session once we've heard from Vaso. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker. So Derek, over to you.
Something went wrong there. Right, try again. Right. Right, are we okay?
Sure are.
Fine, okay. Morning, everyone. I'm going to talk today about the circular economy, particularly with reference to agri-food. I think globally, the COVID crisis has brought to mind resource use in people's viewpoints, and people have a lot of time to sit and think about how they shape things going forward. I'm never particularly one for quoting people, but Churchill, a famous UK politician, once said, "Never waste a good crisis." So we've got the opportunity here to change things and do things better. So let's go. By and large, we've been living in a linear economy. So we take resources, we make whatever we want to use, foods, and then we dispose of things like waste. Increasingly, we're seeing, because of climate change and the need to use resources better, we need a circular economy. The EU are particularly good on that. Their Circular Action Plan, I would recommend you go and look for it. It's based on the tenets of recycle, remanufacture, reuse and repair. And actually Scotland is developing its own circular economy bill, which should have been in place last year. this year rather, but COVID slid things back, so we'll see that coming in. But we have our own strategy, and it very much aligns with what the EU is doing. Focusing much more down on the agri-food area, I was part of a group that helped define what the potential for using these wastes are in Scotland. It's got the not particularly useful title of biorefining potential for Scotland. It's essentially what wastes do we have, what technologies do we have in place, and what can we then do by combining them together to make more things. The mapping exercise was quite detailed. I'm sorry this is a busy slide, but it's a wow slide. We looked at the wastes in the different regional areas within Scotland so we could identify where specific wastes were concentrated. We've regionalised where all the wastes are generated, and from that we've started to develop valorisation projects. So one of the interesting ones was actually, and this is one definitely for the modern life, is working with two entrepreneurs who looked and saw there was a huge amount of coffee waste being generated in the proliferation of coffee shops, not just in Scotland, but all over. And so with them, we've developed processes that extract out the essential oils from waste coffee. So that's what's knocked out after you've extracted the lovely drink. But from the ground that's left after the oil extraction, we're looking at that to see if that's a useful support for horticulture as well. So a nice full circular project there. If you want to go to the other end of the scale, there's projects we're working on where we can take the huge tonnage of straw that's available and through some really neat chemistry, crack that down into monomers that can then be, with other chemicals, used to make things like PET plastics. And of course, we live in a world of PET plastics, and you can see all the products there, from running shoes, prams, everyone has a mobile phone case. They're all PET based. And so we can make these much more sustainable. And I think key to that is creating sustainable monomers going into an existing infrastructure. We will never stop using plastics. We just need to better think in how we make the plastics and recycle them. One of the other ones that's sort of very timely at the moment is a project we're working on at the moment to develop multiple use and sustainable PPE. To be honest, it's a bit annoying we've got the vaccine because we might not need these masks immediately, but however, there will be other pandemics. So currently people are using disposable plastic masks, and if each person in the UK used one mask a day and threw it away, that would create close to 70,000 tonnes of contaminated plastic every year. So what we've done is we're using waste from the sugar beet industry and the inorganics industry and creating masks that can be used multiple times. And what we found at the moment is not only have they got a plus 99% viral kill, they've got an almost 100% bacterial kill as well. So we're looking at a really interesting commercial product there from two different waste streams. The other one in the agri-food side is we're shifting to a plant protein economy. And what we'll need to do with that is fractionate the plant products that are coming out. And what that generates are different fractions. So ones that can be high protein, you can be have plant protein hulls, the outside of, for example, the fava beans. Now they're going to cattle feed at the moment, but actually processing them up, you produce fantastic dietary fiber that can go into human foods. But you also get starch-rich fractions, and these can then be used to go into baked products or actually beans. And this beer was from bean starch, and it was actually produced by the fantastic distiller Kirsty Black, who works at Arbikie. So there's a nice connection there again. Shooting ahead a bit faster. Seems to have a mind of its own. So one of the other bits, of course, is fruit. Scotland is particularly known for its soft fruit industry. And from that, much of it, certainly from things like blackcurrant, is used to go into the iconic drink Ribena. So the pomace from that is a great phytochemical source of chemicals that can be used for many things, particularly colorants. And actually, they've since been developed into sustainable hair dyes, not by us, but by a group in Leeds that we work with as well. And we've worked on many of the other soft fruit industries where we can extract value from different parts of it. So if you're growing cherries, and that's a hugely growing industry in Scotland at the moment, if it doesn't make the class 1 fruit, and that's the one the retailers want, what do you do with the rest of it? Well, the pulp can be used, processed into foods. That's quite low value. But if you extract the volatiles from that, or the flavour components, you can start to create flavour components there, and they've got a ready market for that. Interestingly, and one that came out of the blue for us was actually the stems of the cherries. We thought, that's just going to be rubbish. That's just going to go back on land. But there's a huge market for that, for cherry stem tea in places like Turkey. We didn't know about that, but it's hugely valuable. I think Harrods sell a box of cherry stem teas, 100 grams at £15 a box. So something that we were throwing on land, we've suddenly went, whoa, no, this isn't going to happen anymore. We might have a product here. And of course, you've got the interesting bit, the pits, the stones in the middle of the stems. If you mill them down to the right size, they can replace microplastics that in the dermal abrasion products that invariably almost every household has at the moment for these dermal scrubs. And so it's a lovely sustainable product can be produced from that. At the other part, kind of agri-food, seaweed's been a huge crop that's been grown for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so we're working with all of those industries, certainly in Scotland, and looking at every step along their bioprocessing line. And we found that their wastes can actually be reprocessed or repurposed into industries such as medical food, agri, animal feeds, or also sources of monomers for real bioplastics and biostimulants. So that will get a reinvigoration, and that can often be the killer cure of generating value from co-products that suddenly make the whole industry sustainable. So if we change tack a bit, we've got lots of biomass that can be used, and insect production is one area that's definitely worth looking at. In fact, we've got the expert online. I think William Clark from Zero Waste Scotland's listening at the moment, and this slide's from William. So if you've got about 100 kilograms of biomass food waste, from that, if you get the right insect, you can generate significant levels of not just protein from insect, but they're good oil sources as well. And what they call frass, which is a nice term for insect poop and waste. So the cuticles of them. This is hugely nitrogen rich, and we've actually got a project now running to look at that as an input, as a fertilizer for crops, particularly horticulture. So you could potentially be adding nutrition back to the crops you're feeding to the insects themselves that are coming through as waste. So there's a lovely circularity there again. Of course, the waste can be used to grow fungi, and fungi are classically used to be eaten, mushrooms, but they can be a huge source of products for many other things. Enzymes to go into the food industry or pharma industries, pharmaceutical products. Of course, you've got the classic Alexander Fleming and penicillin. And these fungi need to be fed on something. But also, if you've got the mycelial, the stringy bits from fungi, they can be used to produce fungal leathers. And here we've got an example of the headphone pieces from sustainable headphones, audio headphones that are produced from fungi. You're limited by your imagination on this. I can't really stress that highly enough. So there's multiple different levels of how agri-food wastes can be used. The lowest one, the lowest value one, and probably the easiest one, it has to be said, is simply burn it, produce energy from it, and that might help fuel your systems. So that could be combined heat and power systems. You can use it in anaerobic digestion systems. The simplest one and the most traditional, going back thousands of years, is animal feed. You feed it to the animal, the animal grows and it produces more food. Ones that kind of low value, might be medium value, is if you've got large starchy waste, you can crack them back down to glucose, and glucose is a very valuable chemical for industrial biotech. Certainly in the UK, we'll import all the glucose that's used for that. That's going to get tariffed fairly significantly, I think, with Brexit. So that's a good source or opportunity for others there. And as you go down, you get different ones. You get some really interesting ones where actually agri-food waste, if combined with construction waste, can create new soils that are hyper-absorbent in water. So you put them in flooding areas, so they will moderate flood problems. So they'll soak water up really fast and then release it slowly. So you can look at landscaping and remediation in large levels. Or you can go to the really high-tech bespoke levels where you can take the polymers out of some of these wastes and create 3D scaffolds through 3D printing. And so using plant polymers, you can create very small cages, you put healthy human cells in, and for people that have had leukemia and cancers, you reimplant those cells in. And by and large, the plant polymers are immunogenic and they'll dissolve over time. So they're fantastic in stimulating supports for that. So there's a whole range of value chains there that can be worked on. Of course, we need to consider heat and CO2 in agri-food systems. We can trap both of these from things like flue gases and use them, trap them in and use them for plant production in sort of 3D plant growth where you use A-frame systems or tower systems, vertical farms like the ones we're developing in GHI, and that's quite a ready use for these. So in Tayside already, we've got lots of innovators. So we've got companies like Kilmac that reuse waste, Bonner Yarns, they're reusing their own waste plastics and systems like that. Dundee and Angliss Wood Recycling does what it says on the tin. And of course, you've got Arbikie, who Iain will speak about later. The biggest sticking point generally is people have got ideas, but how do you fund them? That's the sticking point. But there are always rolling funding mechanisms. Now, this is obviously for our UK listeners here, and they can access into those types of things. And I'm more than happy to discuss them later on if people are interested. So hopefully that's given you a flavour, if you pardon the pun, of how agri-food and circular economy can work together. Essentially, there should never be a waste. There's always a use for something. It just depends on the money, how you revalorize that system up. Okay, thank you.
Brilliant, Derek. Thank you so much. Really interesting. John, you are up next. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll try and share my screen. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see this now. It's taken a while there.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm John Wilkin. I'm a senior lecturer in new product development from Abertay University. We're a small university in Dundee, which is not too far away from where James Hutton Institute is, in the Tayside region of Scotland. I'm not Scottish, but I've been here for nearly 10 years now, and I've been working with lots of food companies on many, many different projects. And only recently, the last 3 years, have we been more involved in food waste and valorization of food waste. So looking at some of the work that we do, Abertay is very well known for its food innovation, it's very well known for its environmental management, and it's very well known for its computer games. We're one of the leading universities for computer games and applied games stuff. So we've got a little bit of a project that I'll talk about right at the end that will help some of the people within the region. But what I like to stress is the food and drink expertise within the team that we have is on mainly on secondary manufacture. So where James Hutton Institute is very good on the primary produce, so coming out of the ground, when you start manufacturing it up, that's where the expertise of Abertay can come into being. So we're very much focused on anybody that's making a product and has waste from making that product. We do a lot of support for businesses or small to medium-sized enterprises we work very well with, particularly with the recovery of waste and then the new product development of that waste. So this is the kind of area that we sit in. And I thought what I'll do is I'll show you a couple of examples of some of the industry-led collaborations that we've been working on. And one of the key ones that is just coming to an end, and I actually pinched one of Derek's PhD students when he finished to complete this project. And he's been looking at working with a company called Arbikie Fruits, which is a pack house that packs strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries, or brambles if you're in Scotland. And what they're doing is a lot of the second-class material that can't go off to supermarkets because supermarkets want the first-class material is going off to yogurt production. And it's not really making any money. It's not really giving the company the kind of returns that they want from that second-class stuff. We're also looking at some of the immature fruits as well that perhaps haven't reached the colour or the size of what they're after for any product. So what we're looking at is extracting some of the bioactive compounds out of there by using ultrasound and then spray drying them down into powder format. And then we're looking at how we can add value to it. And one of the main things that we looked at were these gel things for amateur sports nutrition. So the whole idea that within one of these is caffeine, there's an energy gel, it's got sugars in there, but it also has quite a lot of bioactive ingredients, particularly some of the antioxidants that you're expecting in there. So what we're doing is we're matching it with products that are currently on the market and trying to figure out how to actually have a natural food product. So quite a lot of these ones that are currently on the market are very much chemical driven. And so what we're looking at is how can we make one that is sustainable, has a really nice story about it, has a really nice way of presenting itself as a natural alternative to these ones. So the flavour is perhaps not as strong, but perhaps a bit better in the grand scheme of things for the flavour. The other one, which is a completely different story altogether, is we're working with, well, we've just finished one with Meat Snacks Groups, which is now turned into New World Foods. And what they were having a problem with was that they were making beef jerky. And it's a really strange product because you salt it, you roll it in the flavour, and then you smoke it and you dry it for a long period of time until it gets really rubbery, and then people eat it. And what they were finding was that they weren't understanding the process completely, and they were wasting quite a lot of the food product going out there because they weren't matching what the supermarket wanted for their texture of their product. And so what we did is we've done an industrial-led collaboration again, and we've looked at really mapping the process in terms of consumer studies. This is where we've been using consumers on lots of panels and making sure that we can do something called check all that apply, where you ask a consumer to taste the product and then rate it, and then you pile this all together. You do a very nice statistical analysis, and then you can find out what's actually driving the likability of your product. And from driving that likability of the product, you can then make alterations to the product so that you can then understand the process so that you're not wasting your food product and you're not just putting in a food product and hoping that you get something out of the end of it. We're using actual science to make sure that we can figure out what's actually happening there. So this is a really nice project. And then one that's a little bit off-piste for us because it's associated with the food industry, but not really something that we do quite a lot of. But a company over in the west of Scotland repairs nets from aquaculture, and they bring all these nets onto shore. They scrape them, they wash them, and repair them, and then send them back. So that's the way that they're. So it's a circular economy with the nets. But what happens with that is you have quite a lot of shells from mussels, because in the lochs in Scotland, it's quite a good climate for mussel development. So you get quite a lot of bivariates in there. So you have quite a lot of the shell, you have a lot of protein coming from them. So what we're doing is we're extracting the protein out of the waste, looking at repurposing it. And the most important bit now that we found is actually the protein isn't as key to this as what we thought. It's actually the shells. And so we're looking at the chitosan and chitin and looking at repurposing all of that. And if we are successful with this project, then we'll be able to take shells from all over Scotland and process them. So it'll be a really nice project once that one's finished. It's just, we went in looking at proteins and we actually came out reusing set shells. So it's a really nice example of how you go in first off with a clear indication of what you want out of the project. And then as you discover more and more, you actually find really nice parts of your project. And then finally, this is for anybody within the local area. We've got a project that we're not allowed to mention because until after Christmas, because it's election year in Scotland. And so the ministers want to have a ministerial, I don't know, they want to tell it in Parliament that this project has been funded. And so we're not allowed to say anything, but it's European regional development funding, the last bit that we can get in Scotland before we leave the EU in January. And we've got a 2-year project where we're looking at stimulating the local area for improving SME innovation. We're looking at supply chain. We're looking at opportunities for net zero and then long-term transformation. And this is using the environmental management, the computer games, and the food technology for food waste. So it's a really nice project that If I could do this talk next month, I would be able to tell you more details, but I'm not allowed to. But I just wanted to let everybody know that please do inquire about this in January at some time, or keep your eyes peeled for more information on this. And that's me, very quick.
Brilliant, John. Thank you so much. We just have to get you back to talk about it. But yeah, hugely exciting and a really interesting range of things that lots of us were kind of, well, those of us that are on camera were all like raising our eyebrows and nodding, and things like those knowledge transfer partnerships are hugely useful for SMEs and great to connect them into the academic excellence that's around. Okay, Iain, last but not least, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks guys for your presentation. I learned an awful lot there. And Vaso, are you going to put up my slides? Thank you. It's just a continuous learning exercise here. So thank you for the opportunity to present. And coming up. It's amazing, and actually I'll just do that just now. Just thank the guys from James Hutton and from Abertay University in terms of the collaborations we've done, because we've obviously got an output, and I will tell you that story just now. But just ongoing, there's so much knowledge and collaborations, the way we work, innovations, the way we work. So John talking about that project for January is right up our street, because we're always willing to be, take part in these things. And I think the technology is still, there we go. Welcome to Arbikie Distillery. Quite a lot of you actually probably look at the list of viewers haven't been here. So this is Lunan Bay, just north of Dundee. This was a picture taken by our master distiller, Kirsty Black, at about 6:30 in the morning, because she starts very early in the morning, but she gets the benefit of sunrises like this. So this is a wonderful location we live in, and everyone can come and visit. Hopefully we'll have access to allow people to come and see the distillery in probably May next year. Next slide, please. I'll just give you a quick rundown on who we are. We're a family business. I own the business with 3 of my brothers. One who lives in America, one that lives in Dubai, and 2 of us that live in Scotland. Our family have been farming for over 400 years, and we have a baby business, as I call it, a startup 6-year-old spirits business, which we've really focused on sustainability and on the luxury piece of the spirits market in the world. Our USP is very much field to bottle, so we grow, we distill, we mature if it's whiskey, and we bottle all on the site. Very much an approach that's from the wine industry, and we adopted practices from similar but different industries in the way we work. And we've also innovated, so we have the world's only rye Scotch whiskey, which I'll show you in a minute, called Highland Rye. New one launches tomorrow, so it's a busy time. And also, very pertinent to this, we have the world's only climate positive gin and vodka, which we developed in partnership with the other parties that are here today. So delighted to be talking and speaking about them and showing what the commercial output of these things are, because the science is great, but also you need all the partners to deliver these things, and a willingness from commercial organizations like us to take the jump and work in collaboration. Next, please. This is where the magic happens, and actually to start the journey, this building where our distillery was is a repurposed, recycled dairy farm. Our father was a world champion stock judger and very much a dairy farmer, so the first point in that journey was us very much repurposing a building we already had, and we're very lucky to have that. Next slide, please. People are key to our business, and these are our scientists. We spoke about Kirsty Black. That's the young lady on the left-hand side there, and our other distiller, Christian, on the right. an amazing combination, and great scientists, and their purpose in life, or their purpose at the distillery, is very much focused on our field to bottle purpose, and actually just embedding circular principles within everything we do. And because they're so passionate about it, and I think that's a really, really important point, is if your team's engaged in these things happen naturally. And both of these people question everything we do, and actually as a business and as a business owner, I want them to question the norms in the industry and make sure that we're maximizing our outputs, but also looking at everything we're doing to make sure it's as efficient, but also as circular as can possibly be. Next, please. Again, the location we're in is very much a farming location. We are a farm and we are a distillery, so two distinct businesses. We've managed to combine both, and actually it's nothing new in terms of the farming and distilleries being together, because most farms historically probably had distilleries, whether legal or illegal, in the past. And actually, common sense and the way farmers work is they always worked in a circular way. Perhaps we probably lost some of that ethos over time, but actually we are just basically reviving something that happened in the past. And I think going back to basics, and a lot of it is common sense in terms of repurposing and not wasting material. But I think that's a key message, is that it's revival and it's not something new. There's a lot of common sense and practices that were there in the past. And, in terms of Arbikie, there was a distillery in Arbikie in 1794. And so we are just almost going back to the past. So I think that's an important point. Next, please. I think in terms of vision, and this is important in terms of commerciality, or making the most of the soil we have, is we're a family business, we're an ambitious family business, and we've always set high targets for ourselves. So when we started, we wanted to be one of the world's most sustainable distilleries. We also want to distill one of the world's best whiskies. Very ambitious, but at the same point, we do believe that both are achievable, and we're on a journey to do both. I think we know we're on a journey and we're always learning, and that's one of the reasons I like doing things like this, because I've just watched 2 presentations where I've learned a lot, and I've been sitting writing notes, because you've got world-class experts living in an area where we live. We're very, very lucky to have that talent that we can learn off, that talent we can collaborate with, but also that talent we can give an opportunity to do trials, to do innovation, and actually that's how we will become one of the world's most sustainable distilleries. Because a lot of the things that were spoken about earlier are incredibly useful to us. And even if they don't work first time, we'll try second time, third time. So I think keep trying and keep working on these things. Next, please. Can I go next? Yeah. In terms of, I've spoken about family, and family, family distillery is very, very important to us. And actually, using all the materials that we grow is just one of the key things in the business. And I think going back to our USP, it's very much about growing, distilling, maturing and bottling on a single site. And I think that's a way forward for a lot more of the distilleries that are either emerging around the world, or distilleries are already there, because people want provenance. And if they want to be in a luxury, profitable space, they want to know the provenance, they want to know about the sustainability. We're lucky in that we had farms, and so we were kind of growing our own ingredients anyway. We grew most of the ingredients, one of the reasons we did it. But actually, I think there's learning there for people to go back to basics and actually start to give that provenance and sustainability much more prominence in their business. And I think it's the way forward. Next, please. So that does say the world's most climate positive spirits, but obviously the computer system's not letting us see that visual in whole. But fundamentally, we've done this at Arbikie Distillery, and it's an amazing example of collaboration in terms of innovation, in terms of academia applied to distilling, and also in terms of sustainability that's been recognised on the world stage. We're very lucky to have a sustainable pair of spirits in our vodka and gin in a world that's looking for sustainable spirits just now. Lots of very high-end luxury resorts around the world that need eco spirits. And we've got a story to tell, and it's been very much accepted. I can't say too much about who these people are, but we are working with the very best resorts in the world just now, and these are global projects. So from humble little farm in Angus, we're taking Angus and Tayside to the world. So it's very doable. Next, please. And this was the very first climate positive gin in the world. We'll be very in your face in terms of the brand and what it is, because actually the science backs it up. Again, as I said before, Kirsty, our master distiller, did this as a 5-year project with Abertay and James Hutton. And I think the combination on the right-hand side is you've got a climate positive gin, but at the same time, it's still got the taste and none of the impact. And that combination is a winner, without doubt. I know we're in, I can't say too much, we're in finalising the distribution into the US for next year with probably the supermarket we'd want to work with. And you'll hear an awful lot more about that in the future. But, you know, it's where if people are adopting these principles and this approach, these type of people are interested instantaneously. They contacted us. So actually, if you're doing it right, the world's a small place. If you're on social media and you're on LinkedIn, it's amazing where eyeballs and people hear of stories. And just as tomorrow when we're doing a launch, we'll do media stuff tomorrow, but actually tell your story. If it's a real story, people will appreciate it. Next, please. In terms of the background, in terms of Nadar, being a Scottish business, the brand and the name Nadar is very Scottish. It's the Gaelic word for nature, and I think that tips the hat, as does the tartan on the brand, of our Scottish provenance. Scotland's recognised for its spirits around the world and the luxury element of spirits around the world. Helping within that is the 5-year PhD project that our master distiller Kirsty Black did, obviously in conjunction with James Hutton and Abertay. Amazing piece of work, a long piece of work. These things don't happen by magic. Kirsty's a very intelligent lady and one who we're very, very lucky to have working with us. But again, as her working with her, we let her do what she wants to do, and she delivers and delivers in spadefuls. So I can't thank her enough for her hard work, but also she's part of a team. We have a team on the farm that goes from the guys growing the ingredients to the distillers, to the people that are working on the brands, and also just looking at how we close that loop in terms of what we're doing. As I said before, world-class science, all done here in Tayside and Dundee. So, you know, Dundee punches well above its weight in a lot of things. And actually, this is just yet another project that is being recognised around the globe. I think I said before, you know, basically the collaboration we've spoken about here has created a luxury world-class gin that's in sale across the world. The people we're talking to just now are some of the world's best companies, but based on taste and based on the science and, you know, doing things right, environmentally right and sustainably right. People will recognize that. And it's the easiest, I do the export for our business, it's the easiest sell in the world. If you've got a good story and it's real, people realize that and they can tell. Next slide, please. In terms of the process, basically we're growing peas, which benefits the farm ecosystem. We have bees on the farm, for example, as well. And, you know, we use the honey there for making Axe gin. It's one of our other gins. The peas, thankfully, give a nitrogen fix to the soil. At the same time, it's saving 1.543, I think it is, kilos of carbon per bottle. So in non-PC terms, if you're drinking this gin, you're actually saving the planet, but it's a message, it's a simplistic message which the scientists will hate, but actually if everyone started making or started distilling and brewing brewing beers or distilling using peas instead of some of the grains, then there's a huge environmental impact that could seriously reduce the environmental impact. To be fair, the Scottish Whisky Association and a lot of the drinks business are very, very focused on this. But actually, people like ourselves as disruptors and innovators can push that on in terms of the industry. And also, if we're selling a product into some of the world's best brands, that will be noticed and it will speed up the process. In terms of farmers, soils are improved. When we've harvested the peas, there's residues that go back into the soil. So again, improvement in terms of soils. My brothers and I are custodians of the land just now. We've had this land for hundreds of years. So actually we're just in a moment in time. So actually we need to be able to leave the farms and the businesses we've got to the next generations. And actually we're very responsible for that. So it's one of the other things that really, really drives us. And particularly my brother John, who runs the farms. He's very into regenerative agricultural practices and actually thinking about the impact on our ecosystem and actually what impact we have by farming in our area. Again, the distillation waste, the pot ales are protein-rich animal feed, and I'll show you a picture of our best recyclers lazing about recycling to their heart's content, because there also should be some humour in this, but also it's something that us and we as farmers have done for years. I think also most importantly in this space is it reduces the need to use artificial fertilizers. So actually you're doing something that's natural, and also in terms of feedback or benefit to the farming industry, if it's one of the biggest costs for any farming business is artificial fertilizers. So if by growing peas you can benefit of all of the above, whether it's for distilling or whether for brewing or for other protein uses, which Derek alluded to, there's a lot that can be done. So this is, Nadara is a project in one, but it can be applied again and again by others. Next slide, please. We also distill, I think I said before, the world's only rye Scotch whisky, and I think it's a very, very important process because, again, circularity is definitely in there. So we're sowing the rye, and we sowed the first rye in Scotland probably in 2014 for about 200 years. So Scotland used to distill rye whisky 200 years ago, hadn't done so because everyone turned to barley and to barley Scotch, as I will call it, and rather than rye Scotch. And so we sow, we harvest, again, the stubble and all the residues go back into the soil. So that's a good place to go. We don't malt the barley, we use unmalted barley for this. So again, you're not heating that treatment. We're maturing it in virgin oak casks, and then we bottle on site. Important things in terms of recycling or reusing is the grain waste, the draff is fed to the cattle. And again, the oak casks that we use for rye whisky, instead of importing them from America, we've got them on site. So when we decant the rye whisky out as a 3, 4 or 5-year-old, we're launching a 5-year-old tomorrow, we'll then reuse those casks and refill them with barley whisky, which is the way you make Scotch whisky just now. We're a bit of an outsider and yet again a disruptor in this space, and the Scottish Whisky Association have very strict rules on Scotch. So we have a very long title, a single grain Scotch whisky, and it's even longer in technical terms. So if you disrupt things, you get a lot of, there's a lot of change in there, but then we win awards. We just won the Excellence of Sustainability Award recently, beating the world's biggest drinks company, Diageo. So the industry is understanding what we're doing, appreciating what we're doing. But fundamentally with this, and I think I said it with the others, is we are reviving things that were done in the past. This isn't us creating something new, it's going back to what was done in the past. Next slide, please. The next one, yeah. Growing is obviously essential. We're farmers, so that's what we do. With this, I think it gives us the benefit of best quality. We've controlled everything we're doing in terms of ingredients. It reduces and removes imports, so a lot of material comes from overseas. We grow our own botanicals. The focus is on provenance because we've actually grown them ourselves. So what we grow within there, originally we'd have grown potatoes and still do potatoes, barley and wheat. Most of our barley goes to our competitors to make whiskey. So the farming business is a separate but complementary business. But within this ever expanding grow tunnel project we take heat from the distillery. We're also in sunny Angus or sunny Dundee, so it's one of the most sunny places in Scotland. And the one I enjoy the most is going to Asia and telling people that we're growing chilies in Scotland, which always makes them laugh. But we're also growing lemongrass, we're also growing coriander, limes, strawberries, and our latest one is tea. But we'll come back to that one later. And also we grow agave plants, and I love taking journalists into our grow tunnel, and when they see agave, they always go, "Are you making tequila?" At which point I don't deny it, but it just makes me laugh. So you've got to have a bit of fun in your life as well. But I think there's a lot of lessons from others growing, because it's actually relatively easy to do. There's a lot of expertise in this part of the world in the Angus area, because Angus is very famous for its strawberries particularly, or as John mentioned, blackberries or brambles, as we would call them. But actually, it's amazing what's grown under polythene in Angus, and there's a real global expertise in maximising that, but also us extracting heat from the distillery and elsewhere and combining it with the sunshine. Although, as Derek and I discussed yesterday, we might need to reverse that process and actually have it for cooling, because the tunnels get very, very hot, which is great for grain. Next slide, please. Just a quick look. This is what I love seeing, but these things always take time. And I think, this building here is very special to me, because actually I mentioned before it was a dairy farm. I used to hand feed cattle, the baby cattle, in this very building. So it's really interesting for me to see how things can be repurposed, rethought, and actually casks are one of those things that is very circular. And the fact that we're actually creating our own rye casks, so instead of importing from America, we're actually got them on site, and it's one of the other reasons that the other distillers will be starting to copy, going, that's a really clever idea, because you're actually just recycling the wood and you're not having to import it, and the price is going through the roof in America. So it makes an awful lot of sense, a lot of common sense. My elder brother's an accountant who likes to count his beans, so actually anything that's economically efficient is always good as well. Next, please. Just a quick picture of our recyclers. They like sitting in the field eating grain or pot ale from our peas, and they're quite happy to do it, and they're quite happy to recycle into the grass, and it's a natural system, and they look very happy. Next, please. Quick insight, this is the building on the right is our distillery, the building on the left with all the glass is the new Arbikie Distillery Experience, which we've built the outside on. One of the other projects is now we're working on the internals, and actually what we tell people in part of that will be telling the sustainable story and the field to bottle story, and actually that circular elements we've just spoken about. And it's very, very important for us to educate and explain people in that space, and hopefully we can add that to the conversation that's happening with Circular Tayside and actually have the people up, because we'll have, we distribute to 20 countries in the world, and those numbers are growing. So a lot of people will be coming, and actually it's a great place to educate and tell people the story of the great work that's happening in the area of Tayside in Scotland. Thank you. Next one. Last but not least, so there's the gates. So come and see us in May, and we'll tell you the story of Arbikie. We'll tell you the story of James Hutton. We'll tell you the story of Abertay University and the collaboration on Nadar. We'll tell you about sustainability. You can go in and walk in the crops because they're right there at the distillery. You can go and see the botanicals we're growing, and by that time, we might also be able to tell you about some of the packaging and logistics stuff that we're working on, which is highly confidential, but it's world class. It's very, very positive for our industry, and hopefully we can crystallize some of that very, very soon. But thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Iain, thank you so much. Next up is my colleague Vaso, that I mentioned at the start of today's event. So Vaso is our circular Tayside manager and does a brilliant job in supporting and signposting businesses. So when you're ready, Vaso, over to you. And then after you, into questions. So if anybody's got any questions, put those into the chat and Vaso will pick those up when she's done. Thanks, Vaso.
Hi everyone. I'm going to be super quick with the presentation on Circular Tayside, but you all have my email, so please feel free to ask me whatever you want about the project. So who are we? Circular Tayside is funded by Zero Waste Scotland that exists to lead Scotland to use products and resources responsibly, focusing on where we can have the greatest impact on climate change. Whoops. Decided to not change slides. There we go. So as I said, it is Circular Tayside is funded by the European Regional Development Funds that are administered by Zero Waste Scotland, and the project is delivered by Dundee and Angus Chamber of Commerce and Perthshire Chamber of Commerce, and it covers the whole Tayside region. The reason behind Circular Tayside is that a report commissioned by Zero Waste Scotland identified that we have about £404 million worth of opportunities in the circular economy sector. Most of them are in construction, food and drink, manufacturing, and services, but this is not, we work with every sector in the local area. This is the area that we cover. We have 2 city centres, which is Dundee and Perth, but we also have a lot of more rural kind of towns. What do? We do 2 things. We raise awareness on circular economy and facilitate collaboration, but we also help organizations access Zero Waste Scotland support. So in order to raise awareness, we have our events. This is one of our events, but we have held many more on food waste, procurement, manufacturing, pretty much anything. And we're always open to new ideas. If you have any ideas that you would like to explore in the context of circular economy, please let us know and we will arrange that. You can find the recordings to our events in our event page. We also have our Be Inspired page where we have all the local organizations that have circular elements in their operations. You can find anything from micro enterprises to sector enterprises to hotels, pretty much anything can go on there. As long as it is circular, it's on our Be Inspired page. And on our Circular Tayside map, which is just a map of the local area, and all the entries here are businesses or organizations that have some circular elements. The entries in green are our Circular Tayside ambassadors. This is a fantastic team of about 40 ambassadors at the moment. They are people from local academia, local authorities, businesses, and they all have one thing in common, which is they're very motivated for circular economy, and they try as much as possible to spread the word. We have quarterly meetings with them, and they basically guide us and help us design the project much better. If you would like to join the team, please let me know. We're always happy to have more. So basically how we start with businesses that want to access Zero Waste Scotland support is by a one-to-one meeting with myself, where we identify what their idea is and where they are at the moment. We discuss their project ideas, and we explore them with a range of tools such as our Circular Canvas and the Innovation Canvas. And then, if ready, we refer to Zero Waste Scotland sectoral experts or for the Circular Economy Investment Fund. This is the Circular Canvas tool that I mentioned before. It's like a business canvas, but it has additional fields for natural, technical, and energy resource use, as well as a next use for the end product. We have found this very useful in order to identify what comes in the company in the production process and what comes out at the end of it, and to find alternatives for incineration and landfill. This is the Innovation Canvas. This is for innovative ideas. So if you have an innovative idea and you want to identify the gaps in it, we go over this canvas together, and it tells us what things you should pay a bit more attention to, and it also gives you the resources in order to do that. It's a fantastic tool, and we're always happy to go over this. Both of these take about 1 hour per business, depending on the size. So if you want to go over any of this, just let me know. The Zero Waste Scotland support that I mentioned before, it covers the energy efficiency business support covers loans up to £100,000 They are interest-free loans, and they are aimed at making your energy efficiency better, heating systems, water, electricity, etc. They're fantastic. It's a fantastic business, and they can do energy audits and a lot of other things. So just visit them here and check out what they have to offer. And lastly, the Circular Economy Investment Fund that I mentioned, it's grant funding for up to £1 million aimed at innovative circular economy projects or products. The eligibility criteria is that the projects must be innovative, so it has to be the first of its kind, at least in Scotland. They have to be technology readiness level 4 and above, contribute to CO2 savings, and be at the commercialization stage. This is very important. And of course, state aid rules apply. So I think this is the fastest presentation I've made of the Circular Dayside project, but I wanted to pay much more attention to the Q&A for today. If you have any questions about our project, please send me an email and I'll be happy to answer. But without further ado, let's go to the Q&A. So we had a question, I think the first question that we had was, someone would like to know in which way PET from regenerative sources can be recycled or composted, and which particular systems need to be set up to close the loop.
I don't think you can compost PET, it just doesn't work that way. Interestingly, as that question came in, I got an email that said that PepsiCo are changing to 100% recycled PET in 9 countries by 2030, I think it is. I think they've sort of missed the point that you can't just rely completely on recycled PET because it degrades the number of cycles you go around. But I think they're hoping to create it from packaging. So for PET, there's 2 things. So for recycling it, you need to figure out where you're getting it from and then how you stream that plastic out from the rest of the rubbish. So polypropylene, polyester. Those systems are being extremely well developed. And in fact, local within the Tayside area, there's a company called Bin, who have just had a huge investment from the cities deal, regional development deal, and Zero Waste Scotland to develop a phenomenally state-of-the-art plastic screening and separation system. So PET can easily, quote easily, be separated out. The next step you then have the infrastructure for then cracking that down, taking it back to a usable polymer, and then blending it with other things to use going forward. So that's linking up those streams. So you have to have good waste collection systems and good waste integration systems. The other part then, of course, is you have to make new PET at some point because it degrades when you're using it. And that goes back to what I was talking about. You can use sustainable resources. You can crack down straw. You can use timber products. So if you've got a timber mill where there's lots of sawdust, you can crack that back down, back into PET as well. So there's different routes that will go forward. Killer for most of these will be energy use. So if you've got sources of renewable energy, you'll win. And again, Scotland's useful there. We're not short of a bit of water or wind. And actually what you'll see then is huge, interesting, high-value industries developed in rural areas. So if you're looking for a useful future, you need to be thinking about moving to Scotland. Hopefully that's answered it.
I can agree with the moving to Scotland bit. I love it here.
I believe it did. Does anyone have any other questions? I think that you guys have been very, very thorough because there's a lot of silence from the other side. I really enjoyed the combination of high-tech information coupled with Iain's much more kind of business-oriented presentation. Bertie is asking, are sugar beet-based polymers part of that future? I think that question goes to Derek.
If I had my phone on me, I could have taken you to the lab because we're cutting sugar beet up now, literally as we speak. We're trying to resurrect the sugar beet industry in Scotland because sugar beet makes, not for sugar for eating. I think Scotland's got enough of that. It's got its own problems there. Sugar beet to bioethanol, and then bioethanol to go into unleaded fuels, but also bioethanol is a starting point to complex chemicals. Everyone needs chemicals in all their life. So if we can make them from sustainable sources, yes. The sugar beet itself, the pulp after you take the sugar out, You can repurpose that into polymers that can then go into plastics. You can feed animals with it. So we can use Iain's innately useful recyclers, so we can feed them sugar beet pulp. It should be 100% used crop, to be honest. And actually the green bit above the ground is full of protein. So do we extract the protein and use it in human systems? We can feed those recyclers again, or we can put it into AD plants and create energy that way. It's a spectacularly useful crop. So yes, watch this space for sugar beet.
Again from Bertie, he's asking, miscanthus perennial grass for sustainable fibers, the lignification process, I'm sure that I pronounced this very, very wrong.
No,
if he wants to start an agroforestry business, how does he do that? Based on sugar beet, miscanthus and walnut trees.
Depends where you are. I'm not quite sure where you are, Bertie. The walnut trees is an interesting one. Oh, you're in Perth. That was a quick answer. Actually, to be honest, miscanthus might not be the one to go for, depending on what you want to use for it. You might want to look at reed canary grass. But all of those, we did a study when I was a much younger man in the 80s here, and we grew hemp, miscanthus, reed canary grass. They all grow spectacularly well. This part of Tayside is fantastic for growing anything, particularly ideas, as you can see from today. So I'm happy to chat offline because there's lots behind that story you want to discuss there. And I think
I'm just going to
come in worth exploring. Oh, there you
I'm just going to come in on that. Just to reveal my face. So I'm operating from Perth, and I'm doing a PhD in sustainable chemicals from bio-based resources as part of the University of Aberdeen. I'm studying the politics and policies, but that's not what I want to do. I want to start a business. I want to build a business, and that business is based on the principles of agroforestry. So it's taking a plot of land similar to what the Conservative government announced for England, the agricultural transition plan, which was announced 2 days ago. It's all about rebuilding biodiversity into areas. So I see land and I see the opportunity to grow walnut trees, right? For example, to put sheep on that land to graze, right? And to provide shelter for that sheep, not just a field, right? This is a very, very effective and efficient working field, right? It's changing the aesthetic landscape of farming. This is, and you're re-injecting innovation at the heart of it. You know, and sugar beet for polymers and miscanthus for sustainable fibers. And the end goal for the miscanthus fibers would be to create some kind of brand, so similar to Patagonia, but based on a Scottish vertically integrated sustainable fiber industry. We have a long history of doing fibers very well. You know, I say we, I'm from England, but I live in Scotland now, and I echo your point. Scotland provides a great quality of life, and it's just, I want to start a business and I don't know how to do it.
Come along and see us. We're just along the road. We can probably help you at almost every stage of the process.
I think
certainly from the technology side, and Alison and Vaso have got the business bit there to help you with.
Excellent. You're at the James Hutton Institute.
Correct.
Yeah, great.
We are open for visitors. So.
Well, you just said you're cracking sugar beet in the lab now, which is absolutely fascinating. What are you making? What primary? Actually, we'll talk later.
That's perfect. It's really, it's always really pleasant to see someone so passionate. You can feel the vibes coming off of them. Thank you, Bertie. A question from Fraser now for Iain. Do you anticipate that similar net zero products will follow you in the spirits industry? And is it Arbikie's intention to continue to target high-end markets for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, we will. There's no point in our business not targeting luxury and high-end markets, because we'll never compete with the big guys. I used to work for the big guys. I worked for Diageo. I worked for a number of others, Jim Beam and others in the past. So they can do volume, we'll do specialism. And also we don't necessarily want to have a big distillery. We'll build and we will expand, but we'll only do to a certain size and focus on the markets we work on. The focus will be on quality products, innovation, and just improving what we do. If the next generations, we're building a legacy business, so if the next generations want to do that, that's their choice. I'll be well and truly gone and being recycled in the ground, so they can do what they like. I won't be here. In terms of the industry will, without doubt, we've had most master distillers on site looking at what we're doing. Most of them love what we do because they're not allowed to do it, or the businesses they work with. Diageo will never grow grain. We probably sell a lot of the grain to Diageo that we grow. So we're a vertically integrated business, and that's where learning from the likes of James Hutton or the innovation and NPD stuff that John does in Dundee, that combination is ideal, and it's a great way to work. But also, I think key with us is we can make a business decision or a business case in about 2 minutes. When I worked at Diageo, that would take days. It would frustrate. I used to work with the future boss of Diageo, and it would frustrate him where he couldn't take decisions because it has to go to legal, and it then has to go to comms because it's a big beast and it's in every country in the world. So we can make very quick decisions, and we can decide to innovate. And also, it's our business, so the bottom line isn't always the driver. The long-term building of a legacy family business is, and actually, if we're growing oak trees just now, as we're planting a lot of oak trees just now, they take 50 years to grow. So I won't be here in 50 years' time. So you're definitely building for the future, and you're building the work we'll do with grain, and the work we'll do with, in regenerative agricultural projects. We've hardly started doing what we're doing. Hence the reason why we're learning. We're learning every day. It's great sitting listening to John and Derek talking about what they're doing, because I actually was a KTP at one point as well, so I know that one very well. Sorry, long answer.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. It was a very holistic answer. Another question is related to the fava beans. For human consumption, most of the types have relatively high tannin levels. In what extent this is lowered by the dehulling process as shown in the example of fava bean processing?
Almost completely. So, but the useful thing of that is that you intake the fava bean, you convert it into an ingredient for humans, and it creates a phenomenal dietary fiber. The tannins are then metabolized by the bacteria in your colon. They think, fantastic, this is great, love this. They metabolize everything up, and they produce really beneficial chemicals, short-chain fatty acids that go back into the body, and they're beneficial for you. So although they're anti-nutrients to animals, we can kind of metabolize them that way. Or you can use them as bulking agents for food, because no one wants to cut down the amount they eat. You just want to make sure there's less calories in what you eat, or usable calories. So that hull will have a good use on its own.
They're also quite good for bread improver as well. So we've been finding some really good uses for fava beans, flours and what have you.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? Lovely. Fantastic. Well, I would like to thank our speakers very much for the time today. The presentations were fantastic. You will be able to find the presentation, the recording of today's session on our website, and I will be sending everyone an email with the links at the end of the week. If you have any questions about the Circular Taste project, please let me know. And I'm sure that if you want to get in touch with our speakers for whatever reason, they will be happy to answer any of your other questions. Again, thank you very much, guys, and have a lovely day. Onwards. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Basil. Well done.